This is a late 80s Evinrude 4 horsepower outboard. Doesn't look like much because I have it turned around and it's dirty, but underneath the dirt it's pretty clean. Goal for this video is to see if we can get it running. First thing we do with an unknown motor in unknown condition is we do a spark and compression check. I'm going to take it from there. So as you may not be able to see very clearly, it's pretty nice. Fuel pump's not bad, fuel lines aren't bad, wiring's not bad. The tiller cable here looks pretty nice. Fittings on the carburetor arm, timing advance arm, look pretty nice. Carburetor ain't too bad looking. Starter ropes there. Plugs look nice, coils look nice. Everything about this thing is pretty nice, which makes me wonder why it's here. Because I pay junk prices for these things and hope I get them working. So you never know. Plugs look old, probably original, but there's a little rust or water on them. Engine's not seized up. And bottom plug looks nice too. Reason this thing is backwards is so I can do a compression check easier. Start at the top for no reason. Starter sounds horrible, but it works fine. A little less than 90 psi. That's a little concerning. I was hoping for closer to 100. But then again, 90 is fine. Spark on bottom and 90 psi, so internally we're fine, probably. Remove the safety lanyard from our terminal tiller and recheck if we still have spark. We do not. So our switch is working. The reason it's up in the air is to further my inspections. These things, the, let's see, 4, 4.5, 6, 7.5, and 8 horsepowers of this year, pretty much 80s, had a serious problem with the drive shaft getting stuck into the crankshaft. It plagues a lot of motors. You've seen it a couple of times here, and once where it actually came out. Most of the time it doesn't. So I want to pull the lower off to see if we're going to have any issues before we continue on. Fingers crossed. Looks like a nice motor. Doesn't look like it's ever been apart, which most of the time is a good thing. But if it's never been apart, nobody's ever put grease on the splines, so that may not be a good thing. If you are a follower of this channel, you've seen where I took apart a brand new one of these things. Never been apart, never been used, so it never saw water. So it came right apart, but in that video you saw they never put grease on those splines. I see no paint or wrench marks on these bolts, so I doubt it's ever been apart. They are now. Pinch of corrosion, not bad. Oh, also my findings from that new motor. No NECs on these either. Now I don't know if that's, 100% correct, but I mean, that bolt is entirely dry. There's nothing on there. What I was trying to say was, I may have just gotten an unlucky motor there, why it was never on there. But judging by this thing, probably are all like that. Taking the bolt off from the front now. So it's wiggling, so it's not stuck. At least not that stuck. But we haven't started to try to drop it yet, so we don't know if our drive shaft is going to be a problem or not. Alright, there's the front main bolt. Not even a pinch of anti-seize on there. I'm the truth. Oh, beautiful. So it's either been apart before and somebody greased it, or this one got greased in the factory. Which way is it? I have no idea. So this is a kicker motor bracket, this little ball valve right here. The main engine would be your steering motor that attaches to this. It'd be a nice feature if I had the entire setup, but I only have that part, so that's coming off. We also have something here that somebody put on for some reason. I have no idea what it is, but it's got a hole through it. I don't know what that's for, no clue. It's got almost a threaded hole, so there might have been I have no idea. That's weird. The unfortunate part is we also have a massive hole cut in the bottom cowling here. It doesn't really matter. I mean, you never see it. It's not really going to affect anything. But it's there and it's kind of annoying. Okay, I got the lower unit and the holding fixture. Pulling off the vent screw now. And we got oil. Weird oil. It's green. Probably actually marine oil. I'll pressure test the lower unit, but for the most part it looks fine so far. Kind of looks like usual maintenance on this thing. Water pump, clean / rebuild the carburetor, some fuel lines, check the pump, or just hope it works. And we should have a running motor, so let's dive in and see what happens. Okay, where I like to start first is with the carburetor. Reason being is I'm going to soak it in some carb cleaning stuff, so it's going to take the longest. Get the carb off, we got to get this choke arm off. To do that, we have this little clip thing. Pull that off and try not to lose it. That should allow our choke arm to go further than it normally would. Kinda. No, it's disconnected now, so that's half the battle. It should just slide off, but oh, there it goes. Our grommet is dead. If I have to order any more parts, I'll do that then. There's our little keeper part. Now we can get in there with a huge flathead or a long one. Remove the roller. There's a special washer behind this roller. It's twice the thickness of a normal washer, so you don't want to lose it. Just take the entire arm off. Now we can get to this bolt, and we can kind of get to the one on the other side. It's a little harder to do, but we can get to it. Slide the choke knob off. A little bit of prying always helps there. So getting to the carburetor screw on this side, you can do it, but it won't be easy. The other thing is I want to replace the fuel line, which runs under the power pack over here to the fuel pump. So, again, I don't want to, but I'm going to. And that is to remove the power pack mounting screws here so that I can easily get to the fuel pump, fuel lines, and the back side of that carburetor. Let's undo this clip. Should be able to slide off the little throttle advance arm. And we can undo our mounts here. Let's get something a little quicker than that ratchet. Box and wrench. Looks like some technical stuff going on here. Put some 1/4 20 nuts on the bottom of these bolts so I don't lose them or they don't fall off. We'll take that whole thing out of the way. We can then somewhat remove the power pack. Looks like we have 2 grounding screws or parts under the power pack there. Things are still a little tight. Bit doable. I need to cut this zip tie, slice the tube, and then I'll get that off. Let's just cut that first. Zip tie, I mean. The lower line off, the fuel pump, I don't need to worry about the other side. Let's go ahead and remove the 2 bolts holding on the carburetor. So our gasket is old and hard, but our carburetor, our float, looks properly adjusted. The float valve isn't sticking. It seems to be working. So I'll pull that center out, see how it looks inside. Float looks fine. Do have some scraping on the little float seat. No big deal. This is nice. We actually have a flathead. Needle looks good. Backing needles, whatever these things are called, packing needle gaskets. They look like they're in there, old and hard. Got a plastic clear one. 2 of those. And nothing obstructing the inside of that hole. So for the most part, carburetor is pretty nice. Alright, so that's all apart. We'll clean it anyways. May not need it. You never know. Well, the carburetor is cleaning. We'll change the water pump on this thing. So water pump itself looks like we have some slightly melted veins, so it might have been ran for a second or two out of the water. But for the most part, it's really not too bad a shape. You can tell it's old, but it's not falling apart. So aside from its age and time to replace it, not that bad of a pump. All right, let's get rid of original parts. These new pumps, water pump kits, don't come with new housing, so you got to reuse the old one. That's really in there. Yeah, nothing to it, right? Okay, here are my sealants. Gasket sealing compound, needle bearing assembly grease. We're going to need a third, but I'll show you that in a second. Here's our water pump kit. There's part number if you feel like pausing it. Otherwise, I should put links below. And there's our parts. The third we'll need is the Molly Lube. Small kits come with it for some reason. Larger, expensive kits do not. Makes sense. 2 new gasket, impeller plate, impeller cup, bag of hardware that was already opened. Now, we removed nice pretty stainless steels, and we were given these things, which are completely different from the originals. They probably just got a new screw provider, and that's why the difference. Alright, first thing first, we need a gasket. I'm going to cover it in this stuff. This gasket should only go on one way, so not hard to figure out. Then we need our plate. Which again, only goes on one way. So you can't screw it up if you tried. And we coat the other gasket in the mucus. The gasket sealing compound. Then I clean my gloves. Now on our flat spot on the drive shaft, we're going to install this needle bearing grease. No need that much. In fact, that's a ridiculous amount. Then we're going to install our impeller key onto that flat spot. And we are going to slide down our impeller. Oops. And now comes the fun part of lining this stuff up. I had to move the camera out of the way to get a better shot of it. We need to line our cup with some grease. Usually the instructions here say to use 2-stroke, but I don't have any handy. So I'm just going to use some of my PB Blaster that was over in the corner there. Install the cup into the housing, like so. Install the housing over the drive shaft. Use a 10 mil here right onto the splines to hold it for me so I can turn it. Rotate the drive shaft clockwise with my little wrench while pushing down, and we'll slide the impeller in. When that happens, we can realign the plate, turn it a little bit more, push, and everything is where it needs to be. Going to put some gasket sealing compound on each bolt and slide it into its home. Now we tighten the bolts to 5 to 7 foot-pounds. We have 2 new grommets with our kit. One with a smaller inner diameter and one with larger. Larger would be for like a 6 or a 7, larger horsepower motor that has a thermostat. Smaller no thermostat motors, like what I'm working on, needs the smaller one. Some water pump kits say to coat the grommet in the gasket sealing compound. Some don't mention it. I like to do it anyway, just because the rest of them say to, might as well. That's my theory anyway. Put some triple guard grease where the water tube pickup is. Again, it doesn't say to on this particular kit, but every other kit does, so I'm doing it. Cleaned up the top of the drive shaft a pinch. Our kit came with a new O-ring for the top. Slide that thing on, if I can. There we go. Now we'll use that little bag of moly lube it came with to grease up the splines. And the leftover goes on to the shift rod. Alright, hardware is cleaned up, lower is about ready to reinstall. I'm gonna preload these screws with some gasket sealing compound. Let it drip and find its way down the screw shank a little bit. Gotta make sure our loosely placed water tube is gonna line where it's supposed to. We're gonna have to line the drive shaft and the shift rod and the water tube all at the same time. So water tube seeming a bit low. Use a flathead to help here. Put it right into the grommet. And you can kind of see here what I did, but the tube is definitely in that grommet. See what I mean? It's in there. So that's the important part. So now I can try to get the lower into its correct spot. Take it back out and try again. Didn't think I found the drive shaft's hole. So what I did there was played with the shifter just a little bit, and then rotated the flywheel a little bit, and everything found its way into its spot. So now I just reinstall these bolts. I'm going to use my gear case lube pump and the gear case lube to refill the gear case. Okay, we got a new carburetor kit for it. That is right there. Now, you saw the carburetor when I took it off. It looked pretty clean, pretty dry. Didn't look like anybody had been storing bad gas in it or anything, so this may not have been necessary. I mean, realistically, I could have put gas in it. It might have started right up. But when you're ordering parts, so you're probably going to need a carb kit. I'll just get one. It's not the worst idea in the world, you know? So there is our new float stuff. Let's start with that. Need a new chisel for this. In due time, I suppose. Why a chisel, you ask? Because you need a huge, scrawny flathead in order to do this. And that's not just a tool they make, so you kind of make do with this. Although you'd think they would, given how many carburetors are out there in the world. But what are you gonna do, you know? Now I gotta find my tiny spring. It's right there. Clip this tiny thing onto my float valve, like so. Get my sub-assembly here. Get my float arm. I think the old one was metal. This one's plastic. Yeah, the old one was metal. New one's plastic. Do I care? Not really. Slide on our spring onto our float. You can see our float level is a little off. There's where we want it. Yep, float looks good and vertical to me. Now like that. Jet looks to be nice and clean, or clear rather. Just to be sure, I'll clean it out with my little cleaning kit here. Do it. Time for the flip bowl gasket. Should be the same both ways around. Just looks different, you know? It is shaped slightly different from our one we took out of here. It has these little bumps, the other one doesn't. Do I care? No. Let's go ahead and put it on. Might have the tag in the wrong spot, but that's fine. Now I need our packing needles. We took out 2. I believe we usually use 3. I mean, they give us 3. But then again, we had 2 plus the plastic thing, so we'll just do 2, I suppose. Consulted the parts manual. Parts manual says 3 required per assembly, which means we're putting in 3. Calls for 3 of those, and then 1 this little plastic washer. Install our little keeper. And install our slow speed needle. Alright, so we bottomed out. So we're going to bring it out a turn and 3/4. Let's do that. So there's half, there's 1, there's half, plus a little bit. So that's where that stands. 10. What's that 10 doing here? Well, that's pretty much it. Got some fuel line cut to size. Slip that on. Followed by a hose clamp. While I'm here, I'm going to cut and replace that clamp and the feed hose. I was hoping I could just get in there and pop off the tab. That's not going to work. And the battery is going to die on the phone here, so I'm going to go plug it in, but I'm going to change this fuel line off camera. Okay, back to it. I've already slipped a new gasket onto the manifold there. Gonna try to remember how this tube went. It's pretty loose, pretty sloppy. So I'm gonna tighten this down. It's getting firmer there. That's good. It's not gonna vibrate out right there, but I'll go a little more just cause. Bushing for the choke arm that goes here. Hopefully this stays in place and doesn't break. Oops. What is this thing for, you ask? Well, if we had a internal tank version, I think this would attach to an arm that would turn on and off our fuel. Alright, so there's our choke hook back up. Let's get our little clip reinstalled. That'll keep the arm from coming off, and it looks like our choke is working properly. Now I have my fuel line here. I'm going to wrap it under the wire and we install it onto the fuel pump here. I usually don't clamp it off at this point in case the fuel pump dies. I can replace it without having to cut / possibly ruining the hose. So I'll leave it alone for now. But keep in mind there's not enough pressure going through here to blow that hose off, so it's fine. Now we reinstall our power pack. Now we have these 2 ground wires below our power pack. We need to be wary of those. Need our throttle arm reinstalled. This is how it should look with that large washer I mentioned. Oops. Check for smooth operation. Looks okay. I have some L77 JC4s. Gonna gap them to 30 thou and then put them into the motor. Well, we are all back together, so the only thing to do now is see if it starts. Engine's in the tank, fuel line is plugged in. Pump it up. Alright, looks like we got a small fuel leak. Let's find out why. Leaking out of the fuel pump. Yep, fuel pump. Fitting's tight, so we probably need to rebuild it. Not a big deal, we should be able to still start it. Let's give it some throttle. Some choke. I want to say if we could go down just a little bit here, we can get it idle a little slower. Yeah, look at that nasty water. I should clean the tank before I fill it next time, but I'm not. All right, played with the little adjustment screw on the end of the tiller. That's better, huh? It's this right here. I don't know if I ran out of gas there or if my setting is wrong. So really what I want is to keep the roller in the two lines here on the throttle plate. If I can do that, it looks like that's its slowest possible spot. Let's try that. Oh yeah, landed. So now it's just a matter of trying to figure out where I should have this knob. I'm not even messing the knob, I'm going to do it with the screwdriver. Looks like that's about as slow as I can get it to go. So if you notice, we have a broken tilt knob here. Pretty annoying when that's broken. We also need a fuel pump rebuild kit and a replacement safety lanyard clip that would go there. As I've learned, that's pretty important because when you lose the lanyard, you ain't going nowhere. Nice to have that. So that's it for now. I'm going to order the parts I need, and then I'll make another video fixing that, and then we'll go give it a water trial.